Well, hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck program and to the network that you are building, GBTV. Saving our country is a monumental task. We have outthought ourselves in the process. I mean, it doesn't take a Harvard degree. It takes common sense. It also takes truth and courage to speak the truth. Then you just let the chips fall where they may. Anyone willing to put those things ahead of themselves, ahead of political correctness and personal interests, in my opinion, is a hero. Even if sometimes, Bernie Sanders is one of these guys. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders, but I think that guy has courage. He at least admits he's a socialist. He's the only one in Congress that has the guts to do it. This week, we're showing you people I believe to be heroes. Some of what you have heard, and some of these people you haven't heard of. It started last week with Ted Nugent, who you've heard of. I mean, he is taking it on, man, and not sitting down. You may agree or disagree with him, but he's not sitting down. Monday, we had the whistleblowers from the NSA. These guys, you want to talk about courage? These guys. On Friday, you're going to meet an incredible group of parents and kids whose faith in God has allowed them to work through what others view as disabilities. Truly one of the most amazing shows we have ever done. That's on Friday. But tonight there's a hero from another land, a Dutch politician who is the leader and founder of the Freedom Party there. This is a man who is truly unafraid. Either that or he is insane. Why would I say that? Because he is standing up to the biggest threat to peace the world faces, and he's doing it almost entirely alone. Radical Islam. You don't do that unless you really truly believe it or you're nuts, because you have a good chance of having your head chopped off, literally. In 2008, he clearly showed that he knew what he was saying and believed it and was willing to die for what he believed in. He released a 17-minute short film called Fitna. The film demonstrates how the writings and teachings of the Quran are used to incite violence and terrorism. Perhaps not so shockingly, Fitna didn't sit well with the Islamists and the politically correct Dutch government, who then charged him with hate speech crimes. The world is upside down. I remember seeing Fitna. I was working then at CNN, and I heard it was causing all kinds of controversy. And I remember standing in the control room waiting for it to download on the internet so we could finally see it. I was expecting it to be truly horrible and shocking. But when it finally downloaded that day, we watched it. And I remember looking at the producers and saying, I mean, is that it? Because I thought, man, I really hope that, the Dutch government doesn't see our stuff. In 2007, we ran a 1-hour special called The Extremist Agenda Exposed. No one up until this time had done any of this work on television in America. It was the top-rated show for the entire year on headline news. It beat Fox that night. And it was tough to get through. I'm happy to say I don't have a single fatwa in my head. But Geert has at least 2 now that he made the film and won't sit down. To me, that shows how much further down the road Europe is, and the wrong road. A prominent Muslim preacher, who's the head of the Global Islamic Youth Center in Liverpool, England, called for Dutch Muslims, who number close to 1 million, to behead here. Al-Qaeda ordered his assassination, declaring he must be slaughtered because he had insulted Islam. In the name of Allah, they said, we ask you to bring us the neck of this unbeliever who insults Islam and the Muslims and ridicules the Prophet Muhammad. All told, he has received 285 death threats in the year he released the movie, 2008. His life now is similar to that of a political prisoner, hidden in a safe house, has round-the-clock security, is constantly moved around, has limited interaction with his own family. He is the most threatened politician in all of the Netherlands, perhaps the world. He has needed security since 2004, when there was a plot to murder him that was foiled. To just have him in our studios here in Texas, and we've had prime ministers, we've had presidents. When we had Prime Minister Netanyahu here, who's not really a liked guy, we didn't have the security that we've had in the last week or so. They've had 2 security sweeps this week before he even came to the building. And what's really truly ironic, Geert is the one who is being banned now from entering countries on the grounds that he's a threat to society. The guy in Liverpool who said, "Bring me the head of this man," is living in the country he can no longer visit. In 2009, he was banned from entering England. We talked about that when I was on Fox. It was a night I was trying to show you that soon in Europe it would be hard to tell who the real extremists are and who the good people who are warning, using common sense problems and warning. Soon you wouldn't know the difference between an extremist and a common sense guy. I want to show you what's happening right now. What's happening in Greece right now. The Greeks have the ultra-nationalist party called Golden Dawn. It is rapidly growing there. In fact, the last election, it had 2.9%. That was in 2009. Now their support is over 5%. I read a story last night that talked about somebody who has brought teddy bears and help with cancer and everything else, and they said, okay, sure, they have some problems, but who else is helping us? They now have enough to enter Parliament for the first time. Do you recognize the symbol at all? These are your neo-Nazis. Here's what one party volunteer said, quote, these immigrants have not been checked for diseases. If a Greek person feels threatened by an immigrant, I justify someone trying to give them justice. I don't know why I should care about violence against immigrants. These are the extremists. From where I stand, the way it looks to me, Geert Wilders is not one of them. Even if we agree to disagree on particular issues, Geert is a guy you still can be civil with. He's not going to kill you for disagreeing. And that's where the problem comes in. And either we're going to be able to have these kinds of conversations or we're not. But I warn you, if we don't have these conversations, we will fail to live in a country where you are still able to speak your mind. We're all either going to be on one side and we'll kill all the others, or we'll be over here and they'll kill all the others. That's not good. Tonight's program is for adults only, for people who are willing to hear things that make them uncomfortable. Let's see if we can just agree on what Ronald Reagan said. Ronald Reagan said, if you can just agree on 7 out of 10 things, we're allies. We have some tough questions for our guest tonight, but he's not going to have any trouble answering them, I'm sure. When you are threatened like he is, I have a feeling you've pondered a lot of things. Death threats haven't stopped him from talking and bringing up the tough questions that most people, most politicians all around the world are too afraid to even consider, like the dangers of multiculturalism and political correctness. He continues to fight to get hate speech laws abolished and institute a First Amendment for Europe. He is now warning Americans. Take note.
We will never stop fighting for freedom. As a matter of fact, the more they threaten us with death threats, with fatwas, or with the legal jihad, the more determined we become to continue. We are responsible to preserve our freedom, and we have to take that responsibility at whatever price it may cost. For losing our freedom is no alternative. Freedom is the most precious gift that we have, and we must give it to generations to come.
Considering our current administration is now legitimizing and partnering and hiring members of the radical Muslim Brotherhood and putting them in high stations in our own country, it is a warning, America, you need to hear. He also has a new book out called Marked for Death, Islam's War Against the West and Me. Egypt protested that book and called it defamation of Islam. But here's the funny thing, they did that in December, 5 months before the book was even published. Geert Wilders. He is the leader of the Dutch Freedom Party and author of the new book.
Hi, Glenn. So nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Geert, first of all, let's start here. What is your life like?
Well, I'm an elected politician in the Netherlands, so I do my job mostly in the Dutch Parliament in The Hague, but not under normal circumstances. Since 8 years that the threats began, I have lived with my wife in prison cells, the exact same cell as the Lockerbie suspects were held in my country, in army barracks, in many places. Now we live in a safe house protected by the Dutch government, so as safe as a bank. But in the process, I have to admit that I lost my own freedom. I have not walked the streets anywhere in the world by myself for 8 years, or driven a car, or did some shopping, or whatever. And this is something that you really don't wish your worst enemy to have, whatever political opinion you have, whether you're liberal or anybody from the right side of the conservative side of the political spectrum. We should have freedom of speech without being threatened. And it's not about me, Glenn. Most people who speak out, who dare to speak out against Islam, pay a high price, as I do.
Let me, I want to get to some of the views and stuff, but I'm interested in, I mean, I've had conversations, I don't have your life, but here in America, there are people that speak out that are coming under attack, have threats, etc. I don't have to live in a prison cell. But I know I've had conversations with my wife where my wife, and I have it as well, said, what am I doing? I don't want this life. I don't want to be that person. Have you had those conversations with your wife?
Well, the most difficult part for me, I have to be honest to you, is how it affects my family, the people that I love. I mean, nobody deserves death threats for using the freedom of speech. Like the first chapter in my book, Marked for Death, I say we use the pen, they use the axe. And I expect if I write an article or if I make a movie that if you don't like it, you write another article or your own movie, but you never use the axe to silence someone. Nevertheless, the results of what I say are death threats. And at least they are aimed at me, but as long or as soon as it also touches my family, my wife, my mother, who is almost 80 years old, well then, for me it's the toughest, those are the toughest moments with the most doubt. But at the end of the day, I always continue because I know that not so many people speak out and that the problem is that serious that we really cannot afford to be silenced by people who don't use arguments but use threats. They may never win in a free society.
Okay. The difference between America and Europe is just a matter of time. Would you agree with that?
Certainly.
Yeah. You guys have been playing this multicultural battle longer than we have, and we're still going down that road. I mean, you've got everybody now coming out and saying, hey, you know what, this may not be working. Tell me where Europe and where your country is right now. Give the American people an idea of what's coming our way.
Yeah. Well, exactly, this is my point that I also use in my book, that please, America, the beacon of freedom, as I see it in the Western world, in the whole world actually, learn from our mistakes. And we made, unfortunately, I have to be honest about that, so many mistakes. We invented the multicultural society. I always say that the biggest disease in Europe today is the misconception of cultural relativism. And the political elite, the political correct rulers of most countries in Europe fool the people by saying that all cultures are equal, that there is no difference between a culture based on Christianity or Judaism or a culture based on Islam, and therefore that mass immigration is a good thing to happen. Not a bad thing, but a good thing, an enrichment to our societies. The normal people, however, are waking up. They see that it's not true. They see that it's both costly. Only in Holland, the immigration of non-Western immigrants cost us 7.2 billion euros a year, which is a lot of money, at least in the Netherlands. Crime,
it's still a lot of money.
Still a lot of money.
Yeah.
Crime has risen enormously. We have a lot of immigrants from Morocco, and the Moroccan youth in Holland, 6 out of 10 of them have been detained at least once in the Netherlands, and people don't feel safe. They don't feel at home in their own street, in their own neighborhood. So we went in a total wrong direction. If you look at honor killings, if you look at genital mutilation, if you look at forced weddings, they are happening everywhere today in most countries in Europe. And the people are waking up. This is the good news. Parties like mine, who didn't exist 5 years ago, we became the 3rd largest party in the Netherlands 2 years ago at the elections, out of nothing, because people are fed up by the political elite ignoring those kind of problems.
No, it's a danger that I've been worried about for Europe, but here in America as well, that when the problems get so big, then you can look for a charismatic leader, and extremists will come. I mean, nobody was considering the Nazi Party in Greece a couple of years ago. Now 5% are.
Yep.
And so if you don't deal with common sense before things go crazy, then you're in trouble. How do you... I sat with a bunch of people from Parliament when I was over in Israel, and they said, we want to, you know, we need help, we need some Tea Party, we need some help on some things. And I said, honestly, and I don't say this to the European politicians any differently than I say to the American politicians, I don't trust you. I don't trust politicians. But Europe is extra spooky because you don't have a history of small government. You don't have a history of, small governments never rounded a bunch of people up and killed them all. It's a big government. Sure. How do you make sure that your party isn't affected, or any party that isn't affected, that says, hey, we've got a problem with immigration, we have a problem with Muslim extremists, we have this problem. How do you make sure that that doesn't become round them all up, or, God forbid, in worst cases, we repeat what every country has?
Yes. Well, this indeed is a major threat to in some countries. Big government is a problem everywhere. As a matter of fact, we supported the minority government in Holland, and we pulled the plug 2 weeks ago. That's why we have elections on September 12 in Holland, because not because we disagreed on austerity measures, but because the government wanted to raise taxes instead of trimming the government. So a big government is a European problem. In Europe, unfortunately, there are many countries that don't have a party like mine. We are maybe a popular party. We have cultural conservative issues, and other issues perhaps we are a little bit more liberal, but we are democratic, and everybody sees us as a non-violent, democratic, non-racial party in Holland. Otherwise, we would have gotten 1% of the vote instead of 15% of the vote. It would be impossible. However, there are countries in Europe, like the United Kingdom or Germany, where there is not such a party, where the political elite parties, whether they are the CDU in Germany or the conservatives in the United Kingdom, they don't address the issue. And then the danger is that racist party, like the British National Party, which are blunt racist party, I would have nothing to do with them even from a million miles distance. they radicalize. So the solution is that parties like mine, we also have them in Denmark, the Danish People Party, respectful parties that never use violence, always work in a democratic way. This is the only solution. You see now that leaders from France, from Germany, from the United Kingdom said last year, all three of them, Cameron, Sarkozy and Merkel, they said the multicultural society is a failure. They all said it. But they don't mean it. They don't act upon it. There is still a lot of immigration. There is still no beating of this enormous crime.
I'm going to take a break here, but let me just ask a real short question. Is the problem immigration or assimilation?
The problem is, like I said before, is that we are unable to define who we are. Don't forget, Europe has gone against our nation states. This is why I also, and I write about it in my book, how important the nation state is for your own identity. In Europe, we don't know who we are anymore because of this crazy structure of the European Union.
Right. So is it, it sounds to me, I mean, it's kind of a slippery answer there. It sounds to me what you're saying is assimilation. It's not immigration. It is, this is who we are, and if you want to come, be part of us and assimilate.
Well, I think both. Anybody who comes should assimilate. This is number one. B, we have had too many immigrants from countries like Northern Africa that are overrepresented on social benefits, are not speaking the language, are not working, are overrepresented in crime. So they bring along a culture, Islam, that really is different from our own culture.
If those immigrants were from America and were on the rolls, weren't working, et cetera, wouldn't assimilate, didn't speak the language, would you have a problem if it was a bunch of people that were like me?
I would have a problem with anybody who doesn't work if they can work and can contribute to society. But I have an extra problem, which is the reality in Europe today. We don't have problems with people from New Zealand or Canada or the United States in the streets of Holland. The reality is that we have problems with people from non-Western countries, often Arab countries. And we should deal with that. And you should be able to say so without being labeled racist or extremist.
Okay, so let's get into that. I want to get in specifically to Islam when we come back. Just a bit. All right, here come the tough questions, because there's something confusing to me that I don't know if I understand from you. I have good friends who are Muslim. Zudi Jasser, who is you know him?
I know the name.
Yeah, he's a good man, and he is inside trying to reform. Do you believe that you can be a Muslim and not be an extremist or terrorist or a danger to the West?
Well, it's not important if I think that's possible. I think it's important if Islam believes it's possible.
Wait. I'll stop here because I want to make sure I get you every step of the way here and understand what you're saying. If you say that, you are giving the responsibility of definition of who's a Muslim and who's a bad Muslim to the extremist.
No.
No?
Now listen, my definition of Islam is twofold. A, it's what's written in the Quran. B, it's the life of Muhammad. Anything else is unimportant. Because as you know, Muslims believe that the Quran was the literal word of God. And the original copy is still in heaven on the golden table, and it was recited in the year 610 at the night of Qamar through Gabriel to Muhammad. But it's the literal word of God. And the word of Muhammad, as an example, is also the life of Muhammad is an example for many people as well. And the Sirah, the biography of Muhammad, teaches us his life. Anything else is unimportant. So I believe that there is no and there never will be a moderate Islam. However, I believe in people. I make a distinction between the ideology. I believe Islam is more, maybe we can talk about it later a little bit more, an ideology than a religion, and the people. And of course, most people who call themselves Muslims are non-violent, are not terrorists, are not extremists. It would be ridiculous even to suggest that. So I acknowledge the fact that the majority of the people who call themselves Muslims are non-violent, moderate people, but according to the two bases of the Islam, being the Quran and the life of Muhammad, they will probably will not be seen
Okay,
as
you're a big supporter of Israel.
And I'm the biggest one, at least in Holland.
Okay, I'll arm wrestle you. Big supporter on Israel.
Yeah.
I know some of the biggest rabbis in all of Judaism today. Some of them extremely orthodox. Some of them not. But wait, hang on. But I don't know a single one of them that stones somebody to death for adultery. Okay? But they're still Jewish. Even though the text says, without the New Testament, the text says, stone them for adultery. They don't do it because there was reform and growth there. Aren't people like Zudi reformers who are saying, hey, we shouldn't stone people to death for homosexuality anymore? And isn't that important to support those people? Even if you didn't believe in anything that they believe, wouldn't that help destroy the tenets and the support of those who are stoning people for being homosexual?
But there's a big difference between Judaism or Christianity and Islam. Not only the difference that Muslims believe that it's the literal word of God, unlike in Christianity and Judaism, but look at the Quran, look what it says, and you can totally not compare it to the other real religions. It says that apostates have to be killed. It says that the infidels have to be killed. It says that the Christians and the Jews have to be killed. As a matter of fact, when Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Medina, the Jews did not want to stone anymore, and he reintroduced it for adultery. So even if you look at it from an historical reason, there is a big difference between Islam and the other religions. So yes, I applaud people like your friend, and I know many of them myself as well, who are for moderation, who want to assimilate in any possible way in our free societies. And I wish that more people did it. The best way, according to me, would be that Muslims, if they would, as a matter of fact, choose for liberty, for them to leave Islam, to not consider themselves Muslim anymore. And it's not my invention. It's like the Turkish Prime Minister, Mr. Erdogan, said, and unfortunately on that part I have to agree with him. I disagree with a lot of things he says, but I agree with him. He says there is only one Islam, and that is the Islam of the Quran. And this, unfortunately, is true. We can and we should invest in people, but we should forget about it's a fairy tale to think that Islam will be moderated even in 1,000 years.
I don't think I agree with you on that. But
okay.
So then in your, let's say, you become the king of the world. Do you ban Islam?
I would not ban Islam, but I would make it, I would have less Islam. Yes, I proposed.
Well, that doesn't, I mean, in America, those are politicians who say, abortion, I'm against it, but it should be available and safe. And
well, let me give you a fair answer. In our party program in Holland, we are saying no more mosques in the Netherlands. We do. It's ridiculous. If you talk about reciprocity, that we allow hundreds of mosques in our society, where at the same time not one church can be built in Saudi Arabia. If you have a Bible, you will be sentenced for some kind of terrible penalty. So I say no more mosques in our societies. I say stop and close down all the Islamic schools. I want young Muslim children to assimilate, to get a job, to get Dutch friends, and not start as young children in a school that is based on separation and violence, because once again, that's true. And maybe, if you allow me, the big difference is that I see, and this is what I try to explain in my book, Marked for Death, is that Islam is not so much a religion. Yes, it has temples, it has a god, it has a holy book, so maybe 10% of the symbolism is really religion. But the content really is to be compared with totalitarian ideologies. That's why I always say, please don't make the mistake. I know how important freedom of religion, especially in the United States of America, is. But don't see Islam as a religion. Compare it with communism or fascism. They also had in common that you were not allowed to leave it. If you leave Islam, the penalty is death. It was not different in Nazi Germany or in communist Russia. The ruling that they have was not only for their own group, it was imposed on everybody. Look how Christians are treated in the Middle East. It's as bad as it never should have been. So if we see Islam more as an ideology than a religion, then the answer and the solution is that we should have less Islam instead of more. And I believe nobody believed in the past as well that fascism or communism could be moderated. Those were very wrong ideologies, like, according to me, Islam is. It doesn't say anything about the people, but the ideology is totally wrong and dangerous.
Back in a minute. This is a tough topic. Yeah. Let me switch gears here, because I don't think we're going to make any. I don't think we have anything else to clear up here, but between us, let me go here. How long does Europe have with the financial crisis that you agree with me that Europe is right here on the financial cliff, about to go over?
It's almost lost.
It's almost lost. How long do you think you have over in Europe, and what does a post-economic apocalyptic Europe look like? What happens next?
On the economical side, you mean, or on the side of Islam?
I would say economic, but the whole, because of the mess that with the communists, the anarchists, the neo-Nazis, the Muslim extremists, all of that.
I agree.
What happens?
I agree. Europe is today a big mess. Europe, as a matter of fact, has less support than ever in the people of Europe. Europe, the Eurozone became a transfer union. I cannot explain. Now I have to explain to my people and my constituents that we have to do for billions of austerity measures. Whereas at the same time we pay billions of euros every year again to Greece, soon to Spain, already to Portugal, to Ireland, mostly southern countries. So I believe the Europe will, maybe a few months, maybe half a year, but it will collapse. The second thing that will collapse is the European Union. The European Union, as you know, started in the 50s as an economical cooperation organization. Today, it's politics. It's big, fat government and politicians who want to have as much power as possible, and it goes against the interest of the capitals of Europe.
Here we can see in America, we're looking at George Soros, who what they're trying to do is they're trying to knit us into a global union. You have European Union, they want a global union, and it's starting all on finances the same way. That ain't going to work. But how long, what does Europe go into in that Euro collapses? What does that look like? What happens to civilization? What happens to the extremists that are going to wrestle for power and think this is our chance?
Well, I don't think that's what happened. I think that many European politicians, like European commissioners or pro-European people who are in favor, politicians who are in favor of a big, strong, fat Europe, they say, and they said the last few months, that we should not do anything against Europe. We should not have less Europe, because otherwise there will be war, there will be no electricity, there will be no food. They frighten the people by the idea that the concept might be gone, the popularity because of that. So I think that is not true. I think one of the reasons we are in a big mess, both financially and culturally is that we lost, what I said before, the idea of our identity. And for the identity, we need a national unity. We need our own countries anymore, again. And we don't know today anymore who we are. We don't know who we are. We lost it in a supranational body, and we should get our powers back from Brussels, our involvement out of Brussels, our own currency, our own foreign policy, our own flag, our own... this is what I like in America. On every school you have a big national flag and people unite through a national identity. We have lost that. We should have it back. And I think there will be more instead of less stability. Europe is the worst thing that could have ever happened to us.
Do you believe it will happen peacefully, relatively speaking?
Yeah. Why not?
Not communist or national socialists, you know, not fascism or communism?
I don't think that, I don't know one country in Europe where fascists today have any serious chance to get...
Check 1925, you could say the same thing about Germany though too.
Yeah, but what I'm advocating now is that we get rid of the bureaucrats, of the unelected bureaucrats from Brussels, and go back to decide ourselves whether we have to pay money to the Greek government or not, whether we support Israel or we need a total European standpoint with all different kind of opinion. So I'm asking for more sovereignty. I'm not asking for anything bad or war or whatever. I'm asking for more stability than we have today. And once again, the fact that the Northern European countries have to pay for the economical mess that the Southern European countries made today is something that no politician can explain, and that we should end immediately.
Geert, best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me.
Long life to you, sir.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. God bless. Back in a minute with The Oval.